Welcome to Horror Franchise Wednesday. Let's finish this trilogy with Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland. It came out the year after Part 2 in 1989, once again directed by Michael A. Simpson, not to be confused with Michael Simpson, and written once again by Fritz Gordon. And interesting fact, this movie was apparently shot like 1 week after they wrapped Part 2. This movie takes place a year after the events of Part 2, and Angela is now a camper, and she's just here looking to have a good time, but unfortunately all these campers there are being naughty, immoral, and so she has to revert to her old ways and start killing them in graphic ways. And what I like about Sleepaway Camp 3 is that I like that Angela has come full circle. She went from a camper in Part 1, a counselor in 2, and now she's back to being a camper again. And she's just here hoping that she can finally have a good camp experience with no shitheads ruining it for her. But they're just making it hell for her again. And I find Angela to be a lot prettier in this movie with this wig on her head the whole time. I'm not sure if I'm alone on that. And I think that her dialogue, her one-liners in this movie are an improvement over Part 2. And I thought that Pamela Springsteen did a terrific job as Angela once again. I love that this movie was shot at the same exact location. It's just nice seeing familiar territory. And I wish some of the Friday the 13th sequels would have done that. Part 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, just have it be in the same area, make Crystal Lake look like Crystal Lake in every single movie. I hate that in every movie in that franchise. It just doesn't look the same. I liked Officer Whitmore, not only because I thought he was probably the best actor in the movie, but also he was the only nice character in the movie, and I liked that he was connected to characters in Part 2 and a returning character from Part 1, technically. I think he's supposed to be the mustache, the fake mustache cop from Part 1. Obviously a different actor, but I think that's who he's supposed to be. So I loved that connection to the first movie and the second one, because he's the father of Sean in Part 2. I thought the kills in this movie were an improvement. I thought they were just more graphic, more creative, but unfortunately, they were censored by the MPAA, but the idea behind these kills is a lot better than Part 2, which was mostly a lot of cutaway or off-screen aftermath kills. There was a couple of good ones in there, but this one, I feel like every kill, for the most part, is better than the last movie. And I like that there was a few homages to Sleepaway Camp 1 and 2, some pretty subtle, some not, but it was just nice to see. And I really enjoyed the addition of the campground games that were thrown in here. A lot of them Bondish themed. There's a lot of blindfolding and tying hands and tying feet together. But I like that Angela was taking these campground games and turning them deadly, and how it played into the third act. Getting into what I don't like about the movie is the MPAA really butchered this one for some reason. They didn't do much to Part 2, it didn't seem like. But then again, a lot of those kills were kind of off camera anyway. Like the drill kill, the chainsaw kill. There was a quick throat slit. Or maybe not quick, because he was on screen screaming for 20 seconds. But a lot of those kills in Part 2 were just kind of aftermath, cutaway, or just below frame. You couldn't see what was happening to them. So I guess the MPAA didn't really need to censor that movie as much. But in this one, they tried to get more gory and more vicious with some of these kills, and they were on screen, but the MPAA censored them. So it's just it's a shame. I don't understand their reasoning. It's bullshit. We go to these movies to watch people get killed in funny or gruesome ways, and they're just taking that away from us. And while we're on the subject of kills, there's a few too many stick kills. I love that it's the same stick from Part 2 that she used to push Allie into the toilet, but she kills 3 people with that stick. One's enough. Let's change it up a bit, One nitpick I have is that this clearly was shot in the fall, and they're wearing these sweatshirts, and you can see their breath when they talk when it's at night. So it's they clearly shot this in the fall. Who summer camps in the fall? It's a summer camp. It should be in the summer, like the first movie. I wish there would have been a better payoff with the cop character. I feel like the way he gets dispatched was just lame. Like his character should have had a fight with Angela. There should have been a struggle between those two characters, and like he needed to hurt her at least a little bit because he lost his son to her. Like he has this anger in his heart, and he's like, when I see Angela, I'm gonna kill her. And then he never gets to lay a finger on her, and I just wish there would have been a, a cool fight between them in that kitchen. This movie has the same exact composer as Part 2 and the same exact score. It didn't sound like the composer threw in anything different in here, changed it up a bit. It just seemed to lazily copy and paste it onto this one. I didn't like it in Part 2, and I still don't like the score in this movie. And lastly, this movie just feels more rushed, less thought out. It just seems lower budget. There's less night scenes. The opening feels incredibly rushed, like how Angela lands at this camp could have been explained a lot better. This whole opening is just ridiculous. So final thoughts, it's more of the same, basically. So if you're a fan of Part 2, you should definitely enjoy this one. Pamela kills it once again as Angela, and it's a very short movie, so it just flies by. So when it comes to Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland, I'm giving it 4 out of 5. Alright, spoiler discussion. So in the opening, we get a fourth wall breaking from this chick with the words milkshake tattooed on her flat chest. She's got a flatter chest than me, and she's got milkshake on her tits. So Maria is walking down like downtown New York. It was shot in Atlanta, but it's supposed to be New York. She's got the shirt, I love New York. And she's being chased by Angela driving this big ass like garbage truck, and there's all these witnesses, and no one tries to help out. Like clearly people saw this. You can see them in the background, and then she just walks around the corner after she kills her and sits on a park like a bus bench, just sitting there for God knows how long waiting for that bus. And meanwhile, no one ever called the cops and pointed her out like that's the lady. Like right around the corner, she just killed this person. There she is. She's just waiting there. Like arrest her. And this whole scene's ridiculous. The whole opening is ridiculous. So Angela somehow knew about this woman going to this camp, found out where she lived, and then found out like what her hair looked like. So she had a wig made out to look like this chick's hair, and then bought the same outfit that she was wearing that day. So like she knew ahead of time what outfit this woman was going to wear the first night she went to camp. What's the point? Like, obviously they don't know what Maria looks like, because if they did, when she arrived, they would have said, your face is not Maria's face. You're not Maria. Who are you? So making yourself have her hair and then like having her outfit is completely pointless. It's stupid. And then when she runs over Maria, it's clearly a dummy and the head just pops off. So once we're at the camp, we see that the news lady is there giving a report on this camp, talking about the murders the year prior that apparently a lot of people don't know about. Because she's like, shh, no, shut up. Like, I feel like if so many people were butchered at this camp, everyone nationwide would know about it. So you're not going to be able to keep it a secret. But, I mean, especially nowadays. But maybe in 1988, 89, you could keep it a secret. But I feel like everybody would know. She says that 19 people were killed the year prior. I'm not sure how accurate that number is, but it sounds about right. So the news reporter lady decides to ask Angela if she has any drugs on her. The wrong person to be asking that question. But Angela's like, yeah. And then she goes and gets basically poison. I'm not sure what exactly this cleaning thing. I think it was something you use for cleaning. I didn't write it down, but it looks like cocaine, whatever it is. And she snorts it like not even that far from the camp. Like she could not wait to get home to start snorting what she thought was cocaine. She drives maybe like 100 feet away from the camp, pulls over her like sports car and starts snorting it there. And she doesn't like take a little just to test it to see if it's actually good shit, if it is what she thinks it is. She just She takes the whole thing up her nose, and then we hear like her brains like melting. One way you can tell this movie is extremely low budget is the music on Rap's radio, or what's his name? Riff Rap, whatever the fuck his name is. Riff. I think that was his name. From Detroit. He's playing like this horrible like instrumental beat, like it has no lyrics at all. He's just blasting the same shit throughout the whole movie. Like, that's when you know it's a low budget. They can't afford to play any actual songs. Speaking of Riff, if that's his name, all the characters' names in this movie were named after the Munsters, the Brady Bunch, and West Side Story characters. So not only did this movie have a tight budget, but apparently the camp within the movie has a really tight budget because Lily says, we're only eating fish, and it's fish we're gonna catch in the lake. So if we can't catch anything, we're just going to starve. And what about, someone's like, well, what about like cleaning, showers? And she's like, oh, we'll just use the lake. And then we find out later, I'm not sure how true this statement is, but we hear later from one of the campers that every single person here is paying, or their parents are paying $3,000 1989 money to be at this camp that is only feeding them fish that they have to catch themselves, and they have to bathe in the lake that looks disgusting. Half of these kids are from like rough neighborhoods, and no one thought to like pat down these kids. And it's funny saying kids because they're clearly like 25, like they're supposed to be like 17, but these kids look like they need a pat down. And if they did have a pat down, they would have found on Riff not only the switchblade that he's whipping out like 2 minutes into the movie when he's introduced, but he's got like a 9mm Beretta later on. Like, what the fuck? That cop should have patted him down after that fight. When he took the blade from him, he should have been like, all right, what else you got? Instead, he's just like, if anybody has anything else, give it to me now. I trust you. Like, what?
Hey, you got a problem? Suck my dick, Spick.
Riff does have one of the best lines in this movie, and it's, suck my dick, Spick. And then we get the obligatory nudity. All the girls just taking their tops off in the cabin. And the one chick from Night of the Demons is exposing her breasts. This chick who is probably like a playboy. And you see Angela wearing the same bra that was in the Polaroid that the Tit Patrol took in part 2. I think it's a little funny that they keep acting like Angela looks so rough for her age. She's supposed to be like 17. She's pretending like she's 17, but Angela's character is 21. And they just keep saying like time and time again, like, oh boy, you look pretty rough. And she's like, yeah, it was the fluoride or something, like fluoride in the water. But it's like, there's not that much of a difference in your appearance between the ages of 17 and 21. I looked pretty much the same when I was 21 as I did when I was 17. Maybe just a little bit more facial hair, but that's it. I liked that they got the hockey mask from part 2 out of the lake, and I like that it's coming out of the lake like Jason Voorhees. And then they take it a step further by saying, oh, what's today's date? And she's like, oh, it's Saturday the 14th. Oh, that's funny because the previous day means that it was Friday the 13th. I like to think that this creepy romance between Sweet Pea and Herman is like an homage to Mel and Meg's creepy relationship in part 1. And I do like the transition between his pants zipper going down and the tent zipper going down as Angela's peeking in. So Angela interrupts Herman's titty sucking and starts beating them both to death with the same stick that she used on Allie in part 2. And I just wish the other chick would have gotten a different death. Like, 2 stick kills in a row, that's a lame way to start things off here. I like that he got the stick in his mouth, but I feel like she should have gotten that kill, seeing as how it's like a phallic weapon. Sticking the stick down her mouth would have made more sense, but he gets the stick down his mouth, and then she just gets beaten in the head once with the stick, and now she's just dead. Like, that's a lame kill. we get a really pointless scene that just ends with a raccoon scare. And I feel like it's only here because they felt like there's not enough scenes with Tony and Marcia. So let's just have them walk through the woods for a minute, talking about nothing important, and then we'll just throw a raccoon at the screen. I love that she sticks the firecracker up the dude's nose as he's asleep. I do find it funny that he didn't wake up during that. Like, I feel like he should have woken up, not the guy next to him. Snowboy wakes up because he hears the thing going off, but the guy with the thing on his face, in his nose, doesn't like feel that or hear it. Like, that would tickle my nose so much. I would wake up definitely before it went off. But it's a pretty funny kill, and you do actually get to see a little bit of aftermath here. His face like exploded open, and then again we get another stick kill, except it doesn't actually kill him, it just knocks him out. And then she roasts him alive, making s'mores over his burning corpse. So Angela progresses over to group number 2 and says that we need to switch, which I don't understand why. Like, she could have just lied and said, Herman said I could join your group, but instead her lie is Herman said I need to switch with one of you, and she just picks one to kill, basically. She never really gave Arab here a chance to be a good camper. She just automatically assumed this woman's a bitch and needs to go. So she's like, I'm choosing you to kill, basically. I'm switching with you, and takes her back to the camp, kicks her into the tent, and when she's on her way back out to fight Angela, Angela takes the axe and chops her head off. But we don't really get to see that because of the MPAA. Originally, she, swings it down, chops her head off, and then kicks her head like a soccer ball, and we see blood pumping out of her neck. We get this amazing dialogue from Cindy, and even Riff says some pretty funny stuff. They're talking about like their favorite colors and movies, and Angela surprised me with her answer. She said her favorite movie was E.T. Doesn't sound like the kind of movie that Angela would like. But, Riff is like, I like movies with tits and blood. Yeah, I do too. And then Cindy's answer is hilarious. Like, I love what she says. It's something that I like to quote from time to time when I'm talking about movies to people. It's just so funny.
Cindy, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, I don't know. Ones with really good acting, like Gone with the Wind or the Care Bears.
I agree with Riff that rap is definitely better than country. I don't care for all the zodiac sign talk. I don't care about that kind of crap. And I find it funny that she gets more mad at Riff for like smacking food in Cindy's racist face than she didn't get mad at Cindy. She got mad at him, and she was like, calm down. And then said like, I'll call Whitmore. It's like, how? Your lazy ass ain't going nowhere to a payphone. You're just going to sit there. Like, how is she going to call Officer Whitmore? She doesn't have a cell phone. Calling Whitmore would mean that she would have to walk her lazy fat ass all the way back to the camp to call Whitmore, assuming that she even paid for phone service to be at that camp. We get probably the quickest smoke break I've ever seen on film. Cindy and Angela are playing like this blindfold game that's somehow supposed to like build trust between you. But she takes a cigarette break, or in her case, she calls it a ciggy break, and she lights it and then like takes one puff and then throws it on the ground. But she's just such a rich, spoiled brat that she can afford to keep wasting all these cigarettes. And I love how, in Angela's mind, being a cheerleader is somehow like a sin. Like, it's strike one in her opinion. Like, being a cheerleader is immoral. She's like, do you do drugs? Yes. Do you have sex? Yes. Are you a cheerleader? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, strike 3, time to kill you. And this is probably the best kill in the movie. It's so unbelievable. Like, she would not have the strength to lift her all the way up to the top of that flagpole. But it's such a fucking scary way to die. You're blindfolded. You have no idea what exactly is going on at first. You don't know how high up you are, and you can't see anything. That just makes it extra terrifying, not knowing. And then She just lets her go, her head hits the ground and splats open. And again, the MPAA censored this down a bit. We actually got to see like her brains on the ground, a more close-up shot, and they took it right out of the movie. Then this movie slows down a little bit when she has to go like take out the garbage, and she's like reminiscing on good times at Camp Rolling Hills the year before, even though we saw that it wasn't really all good times in part 2. But she's just remembering the good times, and they obviously reshot it. It's supposed to be like the same scene we saw in part 2 where she's singing a happy camper song, but we don't actually ever get to see Molly and Allie next to her. We just see like a hand come in and grab her shoulder, and the ribbon she's wearing for Counselor of the Week is a completely different ribbon, and it's way bigger, and now it has like the number 1 on it. I don't think that number was on it in part 2, so they clearly reshot this scene for this memory that she's having in part 3. Just like in part 1, Angela tells a boy to meet her later somewhere for sex, but ultimately she's just going to kill him. And, like with Paul in part 1, meet me at the waterfront after the social. In this one, she's telling Bobby, the like politician dude, who's into being tied up, she tells him, meet me later, and for sex, and then ties his arms behind a tree and ties his arms or his hands to the bumper of the Jeep, her Mrs. Voorhees Jeep, and then drives off and rips his arms right off of his body. Another nod to part 1 is when Bobby walks up behind Angela and says, guess who, putting his hands over her eyes. In part 1, I believe it was Paul who walked up to Angela and did that, and she was like, Burt Reynolds. Marcia seems to be really turned on by the fact that Tony is this gangster from L.A., and I like that this is like a PSA, for safe sex. She whips out a condom. In part 2, Allie was having all kinds of unprotected sex and asking afterwards, hey, do you have AIDS, by the way? And in this one, they're like promoting safe sex. Another kill in this movie that I love is Lily. I love how she's just so lazy that when she gets pushed into this pit of garbage bags that she just can't get back up. And then I love that as she's being buried up to her neck, that Angela is singing the Happy Camper song. And then I love that she tells her that her husband was cheating on her before she kills her. Like, she didn't need to do that. But she like taps her on the nose. She's like, oh, by the way, your husband's fooling around behind your back, and now I'm going to kill you. And she gets a lawnmower and just decapitates her with it. I love that Angela somehow made her own freestyle, like rap tape. I'm not sure where she got the tape and was able to record it on it. Maybe she has her own recording device somewhere, but she made a freestyle rap tape, gives it to Riff, and when it's done playing, she like makes the tent collapse over him, and then takes a tent spike and drives it through his hand, and then takes a second tent spike and hammers it into his skull. I noticed a weird continuity error this time. There is band-aids on 2 of her fingers when she's killing Lily, but then later that night, when she's killing Bobby and Riff, the band-aids are gone. So what's up with that? Angela like sprains her ankle, and I'm not sure if it was really necessary to the story at all. Like, it never really hinders her ability to catch Marcia and to do everything she does in the climax. Like, it didn't like do anything really. Like, was her hurting her ankle ever really necessary? I think it's poetic that she redug up Lily and put her severed head corpse on the lawn chair that she was sitting in the entire movie before she got killed. Angela tells Marcia to go look at Lily out in the back, knowing that she's back there dead with her head missing. And when Marcia comes back inside after seeing Lily's dead body, she comes back inside and starts hugging Angela for like emotional support. Like, oh my gosh, it was so shocking. Like, hug me, Angela. And it's like, she told you that she was back there and that it wasn't a pretty sight. So she should have been able to put the pieces of the puzzle together and be like, oh wait, so that means that she murdered Lily. But obviously that thought never crossed her mind until Angela said, seems like every time I go to camp, someone loses their head. It was just weird that her first reaction was to go back inside, not hug the cop, but hug Angela, who just sent her out there to look at the dead body. There's a moment of like weird, unnecessary ADR where Marcia, she gets told she's inside the kitchen and the cop is like outside the frame. He's in the other room. He's like, Marcia, get out of here. And then he has to tell her like a second time, and then she leaves and she's like 100 feet away from the fucking building, and you can hear him still in the distance inside the kitchen, like, Marcia, get out of here. It's like, she's gone, way gone. And this is a moment where you could have had a nice like fight between the cop and Angela. He deserved to have some kind of showdown with her because he's got this whole revenge plot going. Like he wants to find her and kill her, and instead all that happens is she takes the gun that he should have confiscated from Riff, and she just takes that gun and shoots him like 3 times. He's like, what are you going to do? Chop my head off like you did my son? And what's it going to be, a drill? And she's like, no, a gun. I feel like that's supposed to be like a callback to the joke in part 2, where she's like, what are you going to do, get a gun? And she's like, no, a drill. So even though Angela supposedly like broke her ankle, sprained it, twisted it, something, she limps back to the Jeep, she's still able to catch up to Marcia. And when she like hops towards Marcia, she does not put up a fight at all. She just is like, all right, you got me, put me in the Jeep. I love the fact that Angela is like Mrs. Voorhees at this point, driving the Jeep, and now she's got Officer Whitmore hanging from a tree like Steve Christie in Friday the 13th. She just cuts a rope and he like pops down, and she's like, oh, there he is. And then she like sets up this whole twisted game, like, you got 120 seconds. This is like Jigsaw. You got 120 seconds, live or die, make your choice. You got to find Marcia in one of these 3 cabins, and she's got like all the bodies piled up in all the cabins, kind of paying tribute to what she was doing in part 2 with that cabin of bodies. And it's just so like convenient that she has this trap set up in cabin 3 that has like these 2 axes that just so happen to land in both of the other 2 characters' chests. Like, that trap only works if they enter the room and then like shimmy over to the right. If they just would have walked straight in and went towards the bed, it wouldn't have worked out that way. They had to walk into the room, trip the wire, and then start like moving over to the right for it to line up perfectly like that. Surprisingly, she decides to let Tony and Marcia live because I guess in her eyes, they're the only good campers. They're not fornicating, but they are, but she didn't see that. If she did, I don't think she would be doing this, but she's giving them a chance to live. And as she's walking back to her Jeep, Marcia, all of a sudden, is now a fighter. She's charging out there crazy, gung-ho, like just ready to fuck her world up. But earlier, she was just like, all right, you got me, capture me, put me in the Jeep. Now she's running out with a knife, screaming her head off, and stabs the shit out of, Angela. And then Tony, for some reason, steps in and stops her. It's such a trope. It happens in all these movies. Someone stepping in like, no, that's enough. Like, don't do it. Like, why not? Let's make sure she's dead. And then you can, like, if she's dead and I'm still stabbing her, then yeah, maybe I'm going a little too crazy and pull me away. But she's still breathing. So don't pull me away just yet. I do like that Angela quoted her aunt, kind of like she was doing in part 2 a little bit. It's just another connection to part 1. Anytime they can bring up crazy Aunt Martha, I like it. I love this final twist at the end here. Like, no twist can ever really compare to part 1, but I love that they threw in this little twist where we find out that Marcia has a boyfriend back in Ohio, so she's not the, nice girl that you thought she was. And it just totally crushes Tony. It would have been funny if he, like, killed her and then was like, oh no, Angela killed another one. So at the very end, Angela's in the back of an ambulance. She's clinging on to life. They're patching her up, but then the one cop is like, why don't we just let her die? She's a psychopath. Just, fuck her. And I'm thinking, exactly. But she hears this and then takes a syringe and quickly kills them. It's so fast and unbelievable. Like, with a syringe stabbed into your belly, kill you right away? Did she like plunge air into him and that killed him? Like, was it filled with poison? I don't like. Then she like stabs the cop in the eye, and that instantly kills him also. And then the movie just ends there. She says another one-liner, and in the deleted scenes, she was supposed to start rapping that rap she created earlier. But yeah, like, does she bleed out? I would think she's gonna die unless he did a good job stitching her up. But she got stabbed a bunch in her stomach and like an axe to her shoulder. So she's gonna need a lot of, stitches and probably some surgery to fix whatever damage happened internally. I feel like she would die realistically, but we never got another movie to confirm whether or not she lived or died. So those are my thoughts on Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland. What are your thoughts on this wacky sequel? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's all an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.